Hey guys, in this video we will download, set up, and customize Visual Studio Code with some of our favorite extensions. Alright, let's jump right in. Downloading VS Code is actually pretty simple. You just go to code.visualstudio.com and you should see this screen right here. It should tell you the kind of platform you're on, whether it's a Mac or Windows or Linux, and you would just simply click this big green button. You will follow the instructions and you will have VS Code installed on your machine. Once you complete the download and open the application, you should be greeted by a welcome screen similar to this. And now we can get into the functionality of Visual Studio Code. For demonstration purposes, I will open a folder like this really quickly. So that way you can see what's actually going on here in Visual Studio Code. You don't actually have to worry about the code that's written in here because we're just going to take a look at what are actual features of VS Code right now. You can see that majority of our screen is currently taken by the editor. The editor is the main area where you edit all of your files. You can open as many editors as you wish, side by side, vertically or horizontally, and we will get into exactly how to do that a little bit later in this video. You also have a activity bar on your left, and it lets you switch between different views. So it has a search, an explorer, your git control, debugger, and extensions currently. You also have the settings icon right here. On the left, you also have a status bar, and you can toggle it by using Command B on a Mac, like so. And it really provides you a more in-depth look on every one of the shortcut features on the activity bar. So you can search for things within your file, for example. Let's look if we are searching for operator, and it will highlight every one of them. And really you can search for functions or something else that you find really useful. You can take a look at the structure of your application and select the specific file that you're looking for. You can look for specific source control information, which we will get into some extent, but it's going to be more in-depth in a different video. There is a debug feature that we will also have a separate video on, and there is an extension that you can search for whichever extension that you really wish. Let's say we are searching for pair colorizer. There you go. And it shows you exactly which extensions that really match what you have searched for. And the last feature that I wanted to talk about in big picture before diving more in depth is the status bar. So the status bar is located at the very bottom of the text editor. It provides some more in-depth information about the specific file that you're editing, whether it's the language or errors or warnings that you have. It will also display some of the shortcuts for extensions that you have installed, such as Go Live, which we will again talk about in a second. Now let's get into the features of the editor, which is probably where you're going to be spending majority of your time. Now let's say I want to open another editor right next to the one that I'm currently working on. To do that, there are quite a few built-in features within VS Code, but my favorite one is simply selecting a file and pressing Alt or Option on a Mac at exactly the same time, like so. So you can see that now we have two editors right next to each other. Let's say I want a third one or fourth one or so on. To do that, you will have to select an editor that you have just created, and that is very important that you select that, and repeat the process, like so. By default, VS Code opens your editors right next to each other, vertically, as you see. However, you can change the way that the editors appear next to each other by going to View, Editor Layout, and selecting any one of these options. One of the cool ones that I wanted to mention is the grid, which allows you to put your editors right next to each other in a grid, and you can toggle how much space that particular editor takes up depending on what you're currently working on. Now let's say you have a more complex application, and I have opened one here just for example purposes. And let's say you wanted to open your index.js file, and you wanted to open not just one file in next to it, but the whole routes folder, because you're currently working on the entire routes folder. So as you see here, you have group 1 and group 2. Well, you can drag as many other files to, let's say, group 2 as you wish, and they will all open right next to each other within different tabs within this particular editor. This makes it particularly convenient if you're working on multiple folders at a time, so hopefully you find this feature really helpful. Another important feature to note about the editor within VS Code is that when you are selecting a file, let's say I'm selecting authroutes.js, it will first come up and you will see it come up italicized at the top. That means that it shows itself in the preview option. So if I'm selecting another file, let's say billingroutes.js, it will reuse the same tab. Only until I click it twice, it will solidify itself and then in that particular tab, and then if I select a different file, it will open in a new tab. And the last two features of the editor within VS Code that I wanted to mention before diving into the Explorer are Minimap and Indent Guides. A minimap is a code outline that gives you a high-level overview of your source code that is located on the right side of your editor. And you can click on any part of this map and it will guide you specifically to that area of your file. It is particularly helpful when you're working with really long and large files, so that way you can quickly navigate your code. You can, of course, move the minimap or disable it completely by going to the settings, and I will show you how to do that if you don't particularly find it helpful. And lastly, indent guides. Indent guides really show you where your indentation is to make sure that your code is easy to read and understand. So you can see the closing brackets here, and they will match up with the closing bracket up at the top. So that way you know exactly which brackets are closing where and how your code is structured. Now let's talk a little bit more about the Explorer function within VS Code. It is located right here on the left side of your screen, and you can just click it and it will pull up the folder structure of the project that you are currently working on. So these are all the folders, and let's say these are the files within them. You can, of course, create, delete, and rename files and folders by right-clicking on it and selecting any one of these functionalities. It is also great to note that you can drag and drop files into the Explorer from outside VS Code, let's say your desktop or another folder, to copy them. Now, if the Explorer is currently empty and you do not have any project at all in here, it will simply open that particular file that you just drag and dropped into VS Code. One of the best features of VS Code, in my opinion, is the fact that its terminal that is built in works really smoothly. And you can open any one of the files within the terminal and do anything that you would do on your machine. So you would just right-click on the file and select Open in Terminal. You can also navigate to the location of a file or a folder on your machine by selecting this particular file and clicking on Reveal in Finder. What it will do is it will pull up a screen like this, and you can see a path of where that particular file is located. You can also use the quick open functionality by pressing Command P and searching for any one of the files and quickly opening it within your editor. Within the Explorer, you have three different areas: the open editors, the project that you're currently working on, and the outline. So the open editors just shows you exactly what it says, just the open editors that you have already open, and you can quickly navigate between the files within those particular editors. The second one is the project that you are working on within all the folders and the files within them. And the third one is the outline view. So the outline view is a separate section, usually at the bottom of your Explorer, as you can see here. And when it's expanded, it shows you the symbol tree of your current editor. So in this particular case, we're looking at surveyroutes.js. And we can quickly navigate through surveyroutes.js by selecting any one of these aspects of the outline, and it will show us exactly where we are on the screen, particularly if it's a large file. So you can select module.exports and it will navigate to where it is currently located within this screen. VS Code also has a built-in version control, and you can locate it right here on the left, right underneath the Explorer. You can click on it. And in this video, I'm not going to dive too much in depth on this topic because I don't want to take it over 40 minutes, but I will have a separate video on it explaining exactly how you can set it up and how you can navigate different types of version control in VS Code. So I wanted to mention that VS Code does have integrated Git support out of the box, but there are also a lot of different extensions that you can find in VS Code Marketplace to utilize other version control systems. And of course, you can do everything that you would possibly need to do with version control. You can stage changes, commit changes, you can merge changes, you can resolve any conflicts that you may have. You can have remote repositories, you can clone repositories. So it's a really great feature because you can do everything directly from VS Code. Debugging is one of really great features of VS Code, and you can find it right here on the left, and you can select it and click on it right here. VS Code has built-in support for Node.js runtime, and it can debug JavaScript and TypeScript or any other language that gets transpiled into JavaScript. However, if you are using any other language, you will have to download an extension. So let's say PHP, Ruby, Go, or any other languages of your choice. This part of VS Code could take a lot of time to cover really in depth. So again, I'm going to create another video explaining exactly how the debugger feature works. But to show it on big picture, I just wanted to say that you can see on the debug menu that will have all of the commands that you would need to really do any kind of debugging within VS Code. Because this video is getting to be on the longer side, I wanted to split it up in two parts. And in the second part, we will cover the status bar, the command palette and how to use it, settings, and how to customize your VS Code to whatever needs that you might have, and then cover extensions and shortcuts. So stay tuned and click on the part 2 of this video, and hopefully you found this video helpful. And if you did,